dialectical historical orientation is all about. So the dialectical historical orientations is primarily related to the methods and propositions of the analysis of social reality. So that means social reality is being primarily studied in a Marxist method and propositions. What is called a Marxist method and proposition to study social realities? So the Marxist method is about adopting dialectical method or adopting dialectical methodology to unearth the social realities. So dialectical approach or dialectics is a method to study social realities. What does it mean, dialectic as a method to study social realities? Dialectic means you can locate the contradictions, you can locate the conflict among social groups or among society, among communities. So locating dialectics, locating contradictions, locating conflict are essentially a dialectical methodology which suggests can be used as a method to study social realities. So social realities are being studied by taking these three aspects. One is called the conflict, the other one is contradictions, the third one is about how conflict, contradictions emerge in due course of interactions. I think if you take these points to study a particular society, certainly it will be trying to take a Marxist orientation. In other words, it will be taken as a dialectical historical orientation to understand social realities. You know, when you talk about Marxist approach or Marxist methodologies, it comprises many adaptive models, many innovativeness, and it is not that the classical Marxist methodologies. So you can locate many innovative or you can locate many kind of new formulations as far as Marxist way of understanding society is concerned. So the Marxist way involves kind of innovations, a new way to look at social realities. You know, if you take this, and specifically in the context of history, what are the historical origin where it suggests that a society has changed or society has moved from one stage to other without involving contradictions or without involving a kind of crisis in the present form of its setup. It means no society, for that matter, can change in a peaceful manner. Some kind of tension, some kind of conflict, some kind of tussles will be there, and that is the key for social change. I think the Marxist scholars tries to locate these contradictions, locate these tensions which exist in society. I think they try to locate the contradictions or the kind of historical evolution of society. I think they all try to locate in that sense, wherein you can locate the dialectics, you can locate the growth and dialectical historical orientation in the progress of society. The society is changing, the progress of society can be located in this particular context. I think that is the soul of Marxist or dialectical historical orientations. Among the early sociologists in India specifically during 50s, D.P. Mukherjee and Ramakrishna Mukherjee, they adopted a dialectical models to understand social realities, which will be discussed in due course of time. But If you refer to D.P. Mukherjee, and you can see that how he has used the categories of structures, class conflict, and the model of socialist society in his analysis. I think I'm referring to three important aspects of D.P. Mukherjee to make you clear that how these categories, specifically the structure of society, class conflict, and socialist mode of society. I think these are the three important way you can look at the dialectical historical orientations in society and which has been proposed by D.P. Mukherjee. If you refer to Ramakrishna Mukherjee, I think which I have already dealt little detail, and his specialist empirical studies where he has used the dialectical method, and that is called the Rise and Fall of East India Company, which was published in 1958. If you refer to this particular book, The Rise and Fall of East India Company, published in 1958 by Ramakrishna Mukherjee, there you can see that how economic and social history of the institutionalization of colonialism in India were evolved, and that evolution or that kind of evolve which has been emerged, that has brought economic policies, that has brought disintegration of feudalism, and that is also created a kind of despotism and the rise of new middle class. That means if you refer to the books of Ramakrishna Mukherjee, The Rise and Fall of East India Company, which is published in 1958, there you can see that how economic and social history of that particular institutions, especially the British institutions, East India Company, has impacted Indian people, has impacted on economy policies, how this has impacted on Indian feudalism, how this has impacted the despotism of artisans. I think aristocratic artisans. I think all these things refer to change in Indian social realities, specifically by East India Company. So it is a historical narration, but this historical narration suggests that how there is a change in economy, how there is a change in society, how there is change for example, how does it impact the feudal structure of Indian society. So the feudal structure of Indian society was also impacted by this, because the East India Company came, they started developing new industrial setup, and these new industrial setups certainly has given an economic alternative to Indian people, and I think that has impacted you can say that has impacted the feudal structure of Indian society. The second important book, if you refer to The Dynamics of Rural Society, which was published in 1957 by Mukherjee, there also he talks about changes in the structure of class. So the Dynamics of Rural Society, which was published by Ramakrishna Mukherjee, again 1957, there also he talks about change in the structure of class notions in this particular book. So if you refer to such kind of studies, you can locate the change. The first point, the dialectical historical orientationist focuses on locating change. Number two, they try to also locate what are the economic factors which contributes for change. This is the second point. The third point is how these economic changes has impacting the people and the society and the interrelationship of the people. I think these are the three ways you can locate these dialectical, theoretical, historical orientations to understand Indian social realities. I think the third important scholar to whom we refer is A.R. Desai. Of course, A.R. Desai's very important book, The Social Background of Indian Nationalism, where he has very categorically said that how nationalism has emerged in India. So nationalism has emerged out of the dialectical historical processes of Indian freedom struggle. So Indian freedom struggle essentially is a struggle wherein you can see the contradictions, wherein you can see the crisis, wherein you can see the dialectical orientations among the people. But out of such dialecticism, you can say that a kind of nationalism which is emerging. So nationalism will not have emerged or would not have been emerged in India unless until we had a British Raj or unless until we have this British colonial rule. So Desai is trying to locate this emergency or the evolution of, you can say, the evolution of nationalism in India. So therefore you must refer the book of A.R. Desai that is called The Social Background of Indian Nationalism, where you can see that how nationalism how in his studies of nationalism you can see rural social structure, that can change in rural social structure, then the nature of economic and social policies which have brought change in rural social structure. So how, because of the British Raj, because of British legislations, because of the policies formulated by the colonialist government, I think all that has some way or in some way or other brought some kind of economic and social changes in rural India. Despite all this change which has emerged in rural India, A.R. Desai was also trying to locate and find out the contradictions and anomalies in policies and change. That means he was not only talking about the change which has come up because of the British Raj, because of the economic policies, because of other policies which was pertaining to governance, change were taking place in rural India. Simultaneously, nationalism also emerging out of it. But he was also trying to find out how these contradictions are emerging in Indian society and what are the anomalies exist in these policy formulations and in its implementation, you can say. So therefore, if you take a combined approach to A.R. Desai and his economic and social policies, you can see that how the process of change resulting from the capitalistic bourgeoisie's interlocking of interest in Indian society. I think these are the very difficult terms which Yogen Singh used. I'll be repeating it. The capitalistic bourgeoisie interlocking of interest in Indian society. What does this term suggest? That capitalistic bourgeoisie interlocking of interest on Indian society. Essentially, what was the purpose of East India Company or purpose of the British Raj? One way, if you refer to Dadabhai Naoroji's book, Poverty and On-British Rule in India, there he talks about the economic drainage of Indian economy, that how Indian economy is being drained to British societies. I think if you take that particular model, there you can find or you can locate the capitalistic bourgeois interlocking. That means there is a nexus between the capitalist and the bourgeois, or the petty bourgeois, you can say, those who were created by the Britishers to use them to have this capitalistic bourgeoistic interlocking to serve their interest. So their interests were being served by making a nexus, means, for example, Jamidars. Britishers had a nexus with the Jamidars. And through that particular nexus, I think that nexus itself is called capitalist bourgeoisic interlocking nexus. I think through this nexus, this British Raj was operating in Indian society. I think A.R. Desai, being a Marxist scholar, he could able to locate this capitalistic bourgeoisie interlocking of interest in Indian society, wherein these Jamidars work as a middleman between the village and the British Raj. So therefore, British Raj and village is being governed by this middleman called Jamidars, and the Jamidars are supposed to be loyal to the British Raj. I think that is called the interlocking, and that interlocking has to be located or has been located by A.R. Desai in his studies. So I think with these aspects, you can see that how dialectical theoretical orientation has subsequently increased to the studies of political structure, agrarian formations, and social movement. So further you can make a link between these dialectical historical methods, that how this dialectical historical method has developed a political structure or influenced the political structure, and it has also influenced the agrarian formations, and it has also influenced social movement. I think these three are the further elaborations, or you can see these are the three extension of dialectical historical orientation in Indian sociology. For that matter, you take social movement. Freedom struggle is also a kind of movement. It's a social movement. And the movement led by Dr. Ambedkar, for that matter, Satyagraha. I think all these things are a kind of negotiating elements with the British Raj. So, but what we learn out of these dialectical historical orientations means how to locate the contradictions, how to locate the dialectics, how to locate the crisis which is exist in society, and out of such crisis, certainly social movement is emerging, or agrarian formations are taking place, or new political structure is coming up. Now, if you take Yogen Singh's reference to his book called Modernization of Indian Tradition, he talks about political elites. So the elites, political elites in the political structure is one way as a kind of, in my understanding, that bourgeois and capitalist interlocking nexus, out of which these political elites emerged, out of which this you can say these political elites or the people, those who led social movement, all that has emerged out of this dialectical historical orientations. So I think what lessons we are learning from this dialectical historical orientations, that the lesson is that you must locate and find out what is the cause of conflict in social relationship. Second, how does this conflict is being negotiated, and that negotiation, whether taking this negotiation to create a kind of solidarity or patch-ups, or trying to suppress a kind of movement, or it is getting a momentum in due course of people's interactions, and that may lead towards a kind of social movement and opposition of that particular social phenomena or social happenings. So therefore, the point I am trying to suggest that you must look at how these crises are evolving, and how does this crisis are emerging, and how does this crisis are being managed. The management is about suppressing, or the management is about is getting a kind of mobilizations, and that may take towards a kind of movement or a kind of opposition to these dialectics or to these contradictions and crises emerge. So therefore, the lessons to be learned from this is to locate this crisis, contradictions, negotiations. All are competitive in nature and all are contradictory in nature. All these things create a kind of situation where people try to question the entire authority, and at times the other groups, especially the bourgeois groups, may be trying to negotiate and suppress. And there are a lot of examples where you can look at how it has been suppressed and how it has been, in the present context. If you look at Indian society, I think if you are emerging as a leader, or some kind of issues you are raising, people try to negotiate with you. They try to give you so many kind of influence that we can make you. For example, if you refer to Kansiram, when Kansiram was leading the movement here in Uttar Pradesh, prior to this BSP government form, I think there was an offer to Kansiram that would be offering you that you come and join national politics, and we'll make you president of India. See, the point I'm trying to say, if you're trying to question the entire system and you have the key to change the society, so people will come with vested interest to negotiate with you, to give you some kind of influential positions by which you will be deviated from your agenda. Of course, Kansiram was not deviated. He did accept this offer which was given to him by the political leaders of that particular time. So the point I'm trying to say, when you raise certain issues, negotiation will take place, and that has to be also seen whether it is sustaining, or of course, if you look at the predecessor of Kansiram, you can see what is the fate of that political party and the fate of the leaders today. So you can see compromising politics and compromising attitudes certainly create a kind of problems in society. Of course, that is the way society has to go. That is the way society has to run. So, but it is not the problem of them. But certainly, it has. Second, I think, the movement which has emerged, specifically the movement which has emerged out of the dialectics and contradictions specifically the caste-based contradictions exist in Indian society. So you can look at all these things to negotiate and renegotiate in this particular context, the dialectical historical orientations.